What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daddy Dimes Radio. Today we are going to be starting it off with the NBA Weekly Recap, but before that, we are going to be starting to post YouTube Shorts on highlights of big plays, where we give hints on NFL players, where one of us has to guess that. So go check that out. You can see some good highlights. So moving on to the NBA Weekly Recap.
All right, so like you said, guys, we're going to start posting shorts that are going to be primarily just kind of regular YouTube short sports stuff, but also some more podcast-related stuff. I think we'll keep doing our weekly podcast, but just to add in a little more content for you guys. But like he said, let's go ahead and get into the NBA Weekly Recap. KD dropped 36 against the Cavs in a monumental win. Both those teams have similar records, fighting to grab that 6th seed and stay out of the play-in tournament.
The Raptors survive against the Rockets on Gary Trent's game-winning shot.
Siakam's triple-double led the Raptors to a 5-point win over the 76ers. Again, those two teams are battling for the 4 and 5 seed. They'll play each other anyways, but it could help them get better. Could help them get home court advantage in later series. And in that series, they start off with home. Then if it goes to Game 7, they get that home court advantage up in Canada if you're Toronto.
The Bucks finish off the Celtics in a battle for the 2 seed on a great night from Drew Holiday.
Anthony Edwards scored a career-high 49 points in what's not a very important game, but they knocked off the Spurs, and the Timberwolves are looking in position to be one of the best teams in the play-in tournament and then make it to the playoffs.
The Clippers, big upset here. The Clippers upset the Suns by 4 in a very key win.
Yeah, the Clippers trying to get that 8 seed in the play-in tournament. The Utah Jazz knocked off the Grizzlies in an overtime victory. Rudy Gobert grabbed 21 rebounds to go along with 22 points. Big win for the Jazz, who are trying to stay out of the play-in, and they likely will, as they're a decent amount ahead of the Timberwolves. But Utah has been struggling this year, but they have a good enough team to make a decent playoff run.
The Mavericks continue to roll with the 6-point victory over the Bucks.
Joel Embiid dropped 44 in the 4-point victory for the Sixers over the Cavs. Another key end-of-season matchup to try and determine these playoff spots. The East is going to be very contended, and the West, on the other hand, is very strong on one side, the upper part, but then gets much, much weaker than the East towards the bottom. While the East has teams like the Nets, in the West, their teams in the 7th spot is the Timberwolves. I'm a huge fan of, but of course they're nowhere near the talent of the Nets.
Next, we're going to be NBA semifinal predictions to the championship.
All right, so I think the teams that will be in the semifinals, actually, I guess it's technically not the actual semifinals that are in their conferences, but the conference championships, that is the semifinal. To then, well, you know what? I will just go through the semifinal, add a little more content here, and I think that the Eastern Conference is going to have the 1 seed Miami Heat matched up against the 5 seed Raptors. I think the Raptors have been a very surprising team, but they just win games. They have a well-built roster, and I think they just have a better chance to not fail in the playoffs like I think the 76ers have a decent chance of. And I think they'll end up beating the 76ers to get in against the Heat, who will knock off whoever the 8 seed ends up being. Then on the other side, I think we'll have the Bucks versus the Celtics, which is going to be unfortunate for both those teams that they have to play such a strong team so early on. But I think that the Bucks and the Heat will both advance. I think the Heat are just too good to lose 4 whole games to the Raptors. I can see it becoming a close series, but I think that the Raptors will win at least 4. Then on the other side, the Bucks versus the Celtics, I think will definitely go to 7. We've had some great matchups in the past couple of weeks between these two teams, but the Bucks are the reigning NBA champions, and I think they have a decent chance at repeating this year. Then the Bucks versus the Heat. As much as I like the Heat and they've grabbed that 1 seed, they've proven they can beat good teams. It's hard to go against the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm gonna have to send the Bucks to the championship game. Now let's see who they're matched up against. In the Western Conference, I think it's gonna stay simple. It's gonna be the top 4 seeds, which means we'll have the Suns versus the Dallas Mavericks and the Grizzlies versus the Warriors. I think as much as the Mavericks have been hot and Luka has been hot ever since they got rid of Porzingis, I think it was a very good trade for them. But I think the Suns are too good. I think they'll knock off the Dallas Mavs. On the other side, the Grizzlies versus Warriors should be very good. We don't know how good Steph's going to play in his return, though I think he should be fine. Maybe not his best self, but he should be okay. But I'm going to pick the Memphis Grizzlies. A little bit of a surprise pick, even though they're the higher seed. I really do believe in Ja Morant, and I think they'll get it done. But then I think they will lose to the Suns, who are just such a strong team. I think they're the best team in the NBA, and they have the best record to show for it. Sending them to a championship rematch against the Bucks, just like last year, where the Bucks won in 6. But this time the Suns are going to win it all. And I know I'm being boring picking the number 1 team, but they're the number 1 team for a reason. Chris Paul's back. He's playing back to his normal self. I think the Suns win it all.
Okay, moving on to MLB recap plus some news here. Mondesi walks it off for the Royals against Guardians. Whit makes play of the year.
We'll have that play on our shorts. Like I said, we'll be posting on the shorts a decent amount. We'll have that play up there so you guys can see it if you haven't seen it already. Then good news for Seattle, who have another great prospect who we'll talk about in a minute alongside Bobby Witt. They came back from an early deficit to knock up the Twins 4-3.
The Cubs beat 9-0 and C.I. Suzuki gets off to a hot start with 3 RBIs.
Of course, Seiya Suzuki, one of the most hot prospects, even though he's not a young guy who went through the farm system, coming over from the whole other side of the world to now playing for the Cubs. But many people think he's going to be a star similar to Shohei Ohtani, and I got to agree with them as much as I don't like the Cubs, but a great start for him. The Blue Jays beat the Rangers on a pinch-hit go-ahead run in the 6th inning. Blue Jays, a lot of people think they're going to win maybe the hardest division in baseball, and I don't know if I agree with them. I really do like the Blue Jays. I don't know if they're going to be able to win that many games, though.
Newcomer Donaldson leads Yankees to 1-point win over the Red Sox in extra innings.
Yeah, Josh Donaldson came along in that trade with the Twins that we really didn't see coming, but really came in clutch for the Yankees against their rivals. The Tigers upset the White Sox by 1 on a solid start for his new team Detroit by Javi Baez.
3 hits from Wander Franco. I can't pronounce that.
Levi, he's the best player in baseball right now, or it was last year. 3 hits for Wander Franco lead the Rays to a 1-point win, or 1-run win. Franco, who was a little bit, of course, he was a rookie, and we know he's going to make some mistakes, but he didn't quite live up to the hype last year, but starting to look like he will this year. I'm very excited for that.
Robbie Ray continues to show Cy Young-like stuff in Marino's debut against Twins.
Ian Happ hit the first homer in MLB of 2022 in the Cubs' victory over the Brewers. Not too exciting home run. We'll get into who hit the first grand slam. We already got one later on.
Seth Beer walks it off against the D-backs. For the D-backs, I keep messing up. Against the Padres on a National Beer Day.
Bobby Witt got an RBI double in his MLB debut to beat the Guardians. Between that and his great play at third base, he's off to a great start. Definitely, I think, better than his fellow debuting prospects. Then moving on to the news, just a little bit of stuff for the MLB, then we'll go through the prospects.
Aaron Judge possibly leaving the Yankees after this year. Thoughts?
Yeah, I really do think he's probably going to leave after his comments. Of course, he'll be a free agent after this year. The Yankees will definitely have the money to sign him back as always. But I think Aaron Judge needs to get out of there. I'll probably like him much more when he's out of the Yankees, as he's a fun player to watch. Just the Yankees, I do not like them. But yeah, if he does leave to a different team, and as long as it's not the Dodgers, I'll be pretty happy.
Justin Verlander is strong in return. He strikes out Shohei Ohtani 3 times.
Yeah, Shohei off to a slow start this year, but that's how he's been before. We'll see if he can heat up and maybe go for 2 years in a row winning MVP. Of course, he's always going to have to battle Vlad Guerrero for it. Pete Alonso hit the first Grand Slam of 2022 for the Mets against the Nationals, got them off to a 4-run lead against the Nationals early on.
Predictions for MLB prospects: Witt, Torkelson, Rodriguez, Rutschman injured, Riley Green also injured.
Yeah, of course, Rutschman possibly would have been debuting along with these other prospects. Way more opening day roster debuts for prospects than ever. But he's going to be missing a few more weeks. And then Riley Green for the Tigers, who likely wouldn't have made the debut team with a solid outfield. They ended up trading for Austin Meadows as well. But they did give Spencer Torkelson the MLB debut. Speaking of him, he's not off to the best start. Went 0 for 4 in his debut. But the Tigers still got the win. He showed some good defensive ability at first base. He can also play third base. Then Julio Rodriguez also got off to a slower start, but he did get a key hit for the Mariners and ended up scoring a game-tying run before Ty France would give the Mariners the lead. And then, of course, Bobby Witt, as we've been talking about, he's had the best start. Even though he hasn't been hitting great either, he's been really solid, especially for a rookie with all this pressure on him as the number 2 ranked prospect and the number 1 right now with Adley Rutschman injured.
And moving on to college baseball, what are your top 10 teams?
Well, so right now the NCAA has, of course, Tennessee on top, as they have been for so long. We'll talk about them more in a minute. But then Arkansas is the 2, so 2 SEC teams leading the top. But Virginia does have a better record than Arkansas. I'm guessing they're just giving them the benefit of the doubt since Arkansas is in a stronger conference. Even though the ACC is no joke either, with Louisville always one of the best teams in baseball. Then we got Texas Tech, the best Big 12 team. Oregon State, who specializes in baseball and is terrible at everything else. But at least they've got one sport. But they did get a loss and drop down from the 3rd seed to the 5th seed in these rankings. And then we have the 2nd and 3rd Big 12 teams with Oklahoma State and Texas, always both strong teams. Texas Tech also very strong. The rest of the Big 12 is a bit weaker, but these 3 teams are always good. Then we got Miami, another contender with Virginia in the ACC, who's not really didn't get off to the best start, but starting to really climb up the rankings into the top 10. The 3rd SEC team in Ole Miss, always one of the best teams in baseball. You will notice, though, the top 10 is missing Vanderbilt, typically up there with Tennessee and Ole Miss, and sometimes Mississippi State as well. Then finally, rounding up the top 10, the only non-Power 5 team, we got Texas State, who was previously ranked 20, jumped up 10 whole rankings. That's big for them. Arizona jumped up as well from 15 to getting to the 11. But we won't go into that too much. So yeah, Big 12 has the most teams. Or actually, they're tied with the SEC. SEC is always the best in baseball and football. But Big 12 is always up there in baseball, and I think is the best basketball conference. Some would say Big Ten, and Big Ten might have been this year. But let's move on to what teams do you think can rival Tennessee, who's been so dominant?
I don't know. It's really hard to tell. Tennessee's always such a good baseball team, like you said earlier. My most likely prospect would be Virginia, I would say.
I would probably say Texas Tech, but they did get upset by Grand Canyon University. That could be a sign of a problem. I don't think it's going to be Oregon State. Miami's definitely been on the rise. I think Ole Miss could challenge them, but they have one of the weakest records in this top 10. I mean, obviously, it's going to be very hard for somebody to beat Tennessee once we get into the College World Series. I think Arkansas has a shot. They were very good last year as well. So I would probably say, I know I'm being boring here, but I would probably say Arkansas, followed by probably Virginia. But then I like Ole Miss as another possible upset choice.
Yeah, I definitely think Ole Miss has a chance to beat Tennessee, but
the big thing for Tennessee is their pitching, and that's what carried Arkansas through last year too. And it's just harder to find great pitchers like Tennessee has in college baseball, which makes them much more dominant, where hitting is the averages are way higher up in college baseball than the MLB. So if you have great pitchers that can have ERAs below 2 in college, that is pretty insane. And Tennessee has multiple of them. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are probably going to we're probably going to start having some shorter episodes, guys. But we'll have more shorts content with you. And it won't be too much shorter. Without NFL, we'll get more once the NBA playoffs come in. But that'll do it. See you guys.